Welcome back to the Whole Nine Yards here. Drew Pien here with Brandon Krikorian on a Tuesday afternoon. Brandon, how's it going?
It's all right. I will say I woke up this morning with a little bit I kind of like lost my voice, so we'll see how it impacts today's episode, but I think I'll be fine. But I would say the games this past week, like, they weren't amazing, they weren't great, I would say. But there were a couple good games at the end. I mean, the Cowboys game was really good. You can hear that probably like tomorrow. I'll probably make that episode. But I guess what were your thoughts on the games before we get into what our record was for last week? Because I know you had a really good week and you probably want to talk about it. But I guess what was your thoughts on the games from last week?
I thought there were some good games. I thought there were some not-so games, just like every week. Honestly, I guess Monday night, the Chiefs-Giants game was... I said I'm not going to bet on the Chiefs. You did bet on the Chiefs.
Yeah, I'm done with them, by the way.
You're done? Okay.
Yeah, no, I'm joining you, and then I'm done.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just not seeming to click. The Cowboys game was a really good game Sunday night. That was the game that I put Cowboys. I bet on them at 2.5-point favorites, but this was before pretty much we knew Dak was not going to play.
Yeah.
This was even before we even had like really much more than like a small inkling that Dak was not going to play. That's why the line was 2.5. I think the second that Dak became kind of a coin flip was, I think the Vikings became like favorites by 2.5, maybe more than that, 4.
I know at some point it was 2.5, and then I think when they said he was officially out, I think it went to 4.
Yeah. Cooper Rush though. I was thinking about coming on here and just like trolling you and doing like a 5-minute skit about just like how I want Cooper Rush to be the new starting quarterback and going on about like how Dak wouldn't be able to win a Super Bowl or something, but
yeah,
I couldn't bring myself to do it. But it was a good start. I mean, he didn't play horrible.
Yeah, he started pretty bad, but he got better. But if Dak was playing that game, I think we would have probably put up like 35.
Probably.
So I think it just shows how good we are. Not trying to like brag or anything, but like a game like that last year, like even if Dak's playing, like it's probably that score, but it's just such a different team this year. It's almost kind of what you've felt the last 10 years with the Patriots, I feel.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about this today, but the Vikings are a playoff team in the NFC right now. I mean, they're not technically a playoff team, but if you had to pick your 7 best teams, I'm sure there are some people that at least before Sunday night would have picked the Vikings as probably their 7th or maybe their
I think
6th.
they would have, yeah.
I don't know that I would do that. I'm not really too sure on it, but right now the Panthers would be the 7th playoff team. I'm not saying they're the 7th best team. I'm just right now they would be the 7th team in the NFC now, and I think a lot of people think the Vikings are better.
Yeah, and really the big question for those bottom 3 teams is the Saints. Obviously, Jameis Winston tore his ACL, so he's done. I think Taysom Hill comes back this upcoming week. If not this week, then probably next week. But still, like, are you really? I mean, I would assume Peyton's probably good with running with Hill at quarterback. But I mean, are you really going to win that many games with Hill as your quarterback? Probably not. So at the trade deadline, we're recording this at 2:20 on Tuesday. The trade deadline's in an hour and a half. So we'll see if maybe they go for a quarterback. I mean, who's really out there? It's kind of some backups like a Dalton or a Trubisky, people were saying. So I don't know how much of an upgrade that is, but they're at 5-2 right now. Obviously a huge one over the Bucs, but we'll see how their season goes, and we'll see if they even fall out. And then maybe a Vikings or a Bears could possibly sneak in there, a Niners, one of those other teams that have been pretty bad so far, but obviously they're at least more healthy than the Saints with that quarterback position.
5-2. I mean, at 5-2, you have a solid lead on a bunch of the other teams that would be competing with you for a wild card spot. Or, I mean, I don't think the Saints are going to win the division, so I'm just going to assume they don't right now. I mean, I like the Niners more than I like the Saints, but the Niners are 3-4 right now, and the Saints are 5-2. And I know we still have another half of the season left, but that is still a sizable gap, at least a sizable enough gap to the point where, you might just be able to get yourself into the playoffs with that gap. We'll see. I still think, I don't know. I still like the Saints without Winston. I'm not a Hill person, and I know you're not either, but I mean, honestly, I don't think Winston's very good, and I'm not sure how much of a downgrade Hill is. Is he, a threat in the passing game? Not really, but
Yeah.
is Winston a threat in the passing game? Like, yes, but more than Hill, but he's not he's really nothing special.
I mean, I guess. I think it's the way they were using him. It was a lot of short stuff. Unlike when he was in Tampa, it just seemed like they were throwing the ball deep every time. And again, Michael Thomas hasn't even played yet, and who even knows when he's coming back or if he's coming back. But, yeah, I think Winston's a better quarterback than Hill for sure. Even though Winston has his flaws too, you could see. I mean, he led him to a 5-2 record. And he probably, I think his numbers were good. It's almost like a Tannehill kind of situation where like his numbers look really good, but if you're expecting him to make a play, he's probably not going to make the play. And the Titans, that's a whole nother situation we'll probably get into. But yeah, I think I'd rather have him over Hill though, because like Hill, I mean, like you said, like the passing game, he's just not that much of a threat. It's really just the running game. So we'll see. Maybe they use Kamara different ways, or maybe Thomas can come back at some point, where that defense has to keep putting up really good days. But definitely, I think it was a big loss just because, again, they're 5-2, but we'll see where they end up. I kind of have my doubts where they're going to end up.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, right now, I don't know if you want to talk about this right now, but who would you pick to be your wild card teams right now, assuming that the Cowboys, we'll say one of either the Cardinals or Rams, Packers, and Bucks win the divisions.
Yeah.
I mean, your wild card teams. Right now, I think I go whichever one of the Cardinals or Rams don't win their division is going to be one. That's a lock. I think I go Niners as the second playoff team right now. I know they're 3-4, but realistically, if the Saints do fall off, which I think they probably will, one of either a couple 4-4 or 3-4 teams are gonna have to be there. So I'll go Niners, and that leaves one more team. That's where you start to get into either Saints, Panthers, Vikings. If a Seahawks could stay afloat, Falcons, like if somehow they don't suck.
Yeah, I feel like a Seahawks, some people may be looking at that because Wilson should be coming back in the next couple weeks, but they play Packers, then Cardinals. I mean, you basically have to win both those games to get back to 5-5, and then Wilson maybe comes back. They play, I think they play Washington. So, we need Wilson coming back for that Washington game or the next game, which is the Niners game. So that could be a possibility, but I'd probably go with whether Arizona or LA, either one. Obviously, is going to be a wild card. I'd probably say the Niners as well. And honestly, I think it kind of matters today what the Vikings do. Again, with the trade deadline being today, we'll see if maybe they just, not a whole sale or anything. Obviously, they're still a good enough team to make the playoffs, but let's see what pieces maybe they're getting rid of. I know Danielle Hunter, obviously their star defensive lineman, he tore his pec, so I don't know if he's out for the season, but he's at least out for a while. So I think they're probably like the most interesting team possibly, just because we'll see what they do at the trade deadline here and what pieces they move, or maybe even bring in someone. I don't know. They have a lot of questions in that secondary as well. So I would probably say the Vikings, but if they're going to sell some pieces off, then I mean, like, I can't go Panthers because I don't think the Panthers are that good. I don't know if you'd agree with that, but they're not that good. And I would like to say the Saints, but they just don't have an answer at quarterback. So I think it's a toss-up between probably Vikings and maybe Panthers, maybe Seahawks. I don't know.
I think if you're gonna have to get into the territory where you start throwing Panthers in the playoff conversation, I think you can throw Saints in there. And I know you don't like Taysom Hill, but overall I think it's a better roster. Sean Payton's definitely a better head coach right now than Matt Rule. And Darnold, while he's a better arm talent than Hill for sure, is also just more prone to mistakes than Hill, just by nature. So I think you can throw the Saints in there. I think right now I would go either Cardinals, Rams, Niners, and then Seahawks. Right now, I think if you made me pick. Is it because I picked the Seahawks to make the Super Bowl? I don't know. Maybe not. So,
yeah.
But yeah, I think, and that would be interesting, I think, to see the whole NFC West make the playoffs would be interesting. If one of the teams from the NFC West were to not make it, I would pick the Seahawks to not make it. But I really just don't. I'm not a big fan. I like the Panthers, but just not ready yet. They're not there yet. They may need a new quarterback. They may not. We'll find out as the year goes on. I think most people are leaning towards a new quarterback at this point. But yeah, I like those. I like the NFC West to make the playoffs. All of them.
All right. I guess we'll see. And also, I just saw on my phone, the Dolphins will not trade for Deshaun Watson, so it's just official. So it looks like he's going to stay with Houston, which, I mean, I guess you could have expected, especially at this point. But it was still a possibility of that happening. I mean, the Dolphins are 1-7. Again, you look at it from their side, they could have got Watson. Tua goes, whether it's to Houston or whatever team he does end up with. You have Watson for most likely the start of next year because once he gets traded, that's when he can get suspended. So let's say he suspends for the rest of this year, and then he's good for next year. They still have a decent enough roster. We'll see. I mean, I would be surprised if Flores isn't there next year. Unless they finish like 1-16 or 3-13 or 3-14, whatever, like a super really bad record. But yeah, I think he's still going to be there for next year. And then again, if you had Watson, which it looks like they're not going to, at least right now, maybe in the offseason, then I think you still have a competitive team. Now, are you one of the better teams even in your own division? No. I'd probably pick for sure the Bills and honestly probably the Patriots over them. But you'd at least be building because you'd have a top 7 quarterback who's 27 years old on your team, and he's under contract. So there's positives and negatives. But do you think the Dolphins should have traded for Watson or no?
No, I don't think so. I don't love Tua, but you'd have to be giving up a lot of draft capital. You don't have your draft pick this year. You still have some picks to trade, but this roster is nowhere near what it needs to be. Even if you add Watson, this is still, I don't know. What do you finish? I mean, I don't know. At best, you're like 500 to end the year, maybe. Maybe slightly better at best. I don't know.
That's like at best. I'd say they're probably a couple games under.
No, I mean like 500 during Watson's tenure.
Oh, with Watson, you mean?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
500 with Watson, which ends up bringing you to minus 6 games under 500, whatever that even is anymore. So yeah, I don't think it's the correct play. You'd have to give up so much just to get Watson. You wouldn't get the luxury that you get with the rookie quarterback, which is getting that kind of 4-year, 5-year gap where you don't have to pay the quarterback anything and you can kind of go all in on the defense and the wide receivers and the O-line and everything. So you kind of just have to have a natural, just an insane roster around Watson and a lot of rookies on the team, so you don't have to pay him anything pretty much. And right now, I just don't think the Dolphins are that. So yeah, I think it was the correct play to not trade for him, at least not right now. We'll see what happens in the offseason because I don't know if Watson's gonna be on the Texans or not come next year. So yeah. That's gonna be interesting. I still probably don't think the Dolphins should make a deal even in the offseason. I don't know what their draft situation is going to be, but I think if you're looking for another quarterback, I honestly think you may have to just look in the draft because I don't think that giving up pretty much all your picks for the next 2 or 3 years is going to be worth it for Watson right now.
Yeah. Do you see another team that is a possible Watson landing spot? I mean, most likely not today, but next year. Panthers possibly. Or do you think there's a chance he actually does stay on the Texans?
I think there's a legitimate shot he stays on the Texans. I know he doesn't want to play for them. I know he's got all the off-field stuff going on too, so he may just need a fresh start. But I mean, he didn't want to play for the Texans. And then all the off-field stuff happened. So maybe if the off-field stuff clears up and he comes back, he's just willing to just play for the Texans because whatever. Like at this point, he's just happy to be able to get back on the field. But if he were to get traded from the Texans, I think there's a couple teams, at least in the AFC, I could see. Maybe the Texans wouldn't want to trade him in the AFC, but I mean, I think just pure rosters that could be competitive with the quarterback. The Broncos, I think the Steelers could be competitive with the quarterback. I don't know what happens with Baker, but
yeah, that's a whole nother situation.
That could be something. I don't think so. I mean, I don't envision Watson playing for any of those 3 teams, but those are teams that with a better quarterback would 100% be competitive. In the NFC, I mean, Washington's a team that you could kind of start to think about, but I'm not sure the rest of the roster's there yet. We thought the defense was going to be there this year, but no. I don't know. I mean, that's kind of maybe Saints. Like I don't know. Panthers maybe. Who knows what happens with the Falcons and Matt Ryan. But honestly, I think if you made me bet right now where he's playing, assuming he plays week 1 of next year, I think I would say the Texans.
Texans, yeah. I feel like he might still end up in Miami, but you're right. Them not having their first round pick this year, I feel like they may just want to hold on to their future assets, because if you just get rid of all of them for Watson, and you're probably not that good of a team. Like, you're probably 500 because of Watson, but you're not a Super Bowl playoff team. Is it really worth it when you can just gather players and players and players and try and build up that way? So, yeah, I guess we'll see. Again, maybe, yeah, you're right. Maybe Watson does want to play for the Texans after sitting out an entire year. He still got paid, but sitting out an entire year, you might as well just play again, because is he going to sit out another year? I mean, that seems a little ridiculous in your mid-20s, but that's a situation to monitor. It doesn't look like he's going to get traded today. Miami was the main team, but maybe another team swoops in. We'll see. But the other probably the biggest news for one of the contenders in the AFC this past week was Derrick Henry getting injured. They said it's a season-ending injury, but then they also said 6 to 10 weeks. Now, I don't know exactly what that means in the sense of, can he come back in 10 weeks? And would you even want to play him at that point? I mean, I guess you would, but do you really want to risk a further injury to clearly your best player on your team? We'll see. Obviously, they're going to be in the playoff hunt. They signed Adrian Peterson to replace him. Maybe they make a trade today for Marlon Mack, was a name that was out there. But just what does this injury do for the Titans? I mean, obviously Henry's their main guy. He had 1,000 yards in 8 games. So what does this injury mean for them? And even with Henry and without Henry, would they have ended up in the same spot in the playoffs, in the playoff run, or do you think it matters a lot?
I mean, I think getting not a quarterback, running back for the Titans is huge. I'm just going to assume Henry's out for the rest of the year. I think that's what the Titans are probably assuming as well. Now, where do you get that running back from? I don't think you're going to be able to get a Marlon Mack, just because are the Colts really going to trade you Marlon Mack when they're the team that, I don't see it. But maybe a Ronald Jones, maybe somebody like that. I don't know. We'll see. I mean, I'm not a big fan of the Titans even with Henry, but without Henry, I'm for sure not a fan of the Titans. I still like the Colts to win this division. They're still pretty far back, but I still like the Colts to win this division. I know they kind of had an ugly loss this week to the Titans, but I still think they have a shot. I don't know, but without Henry, I think this team is done. They can still make the playoffs. They're like 6-2 right now, so like it's going to be hard for them to not make the playoffs. But yeah, without Henry, Tannehill is not a quarterback that's going to get it done for you when teams know he has to pass it and there isn't much else. AJ Brown and Julio neither of them are really consistent enough either. I'm done with the Titans. So
yeah, and that game this past week, if the Colts win that game, they're 4-4. Titans are 5-3. Then they lose Henry. I'd feel way more confident in the division going to the Colts at that point, but it's definitely a tough loss. I mean, not only do you just lose the Titans, so you lose you're already down in the tiebreaker already, but it's just a huge swing right there. And again, with Henry not being there, yeah, the Titans most likely won't be as good as they were before. Because again, that defense isn't good, and they were really winning games because of their offense. So now you lose a huge part of your offense, which forces you to throw the ball more. I mean, Julio's always injured. Brown had a big game against the Colts, but he's very hit or miss and also injured as well. So we'll see. And then again, Tannehill, we'll see if he can. He's been pretty bad so far this year compared to the last 2 years. So if he can step it up, maybe. But at the same time, the Colts and their team, they really need Wentz to play. I don't think he's played bad this year, but he's just made the stupid mistakes. I mean, the 2 picks against the Titans, the Ravens game, that's a game that he probably should have won as well. So they've had some bad losses that, again, if they win 1 or 2 of those games, it's a whole different division with no Henry. So, but you're going to go with the Colts though.
I'm still with the Colts. I've never hopped off the Colts train, so I'll either be right about it or I'll be wrong about it. I don't think this is like a insurmountable gap though, as far as games in the division are concerned. We're only halfway through the year, not even technically speaking. So, or actually, no, we are halfway through the year.
We are about to be. Yeah, I guess technically we're like halfway through.
Yeah. So. Yeah, I don't know. And Wentz has not been a top. I don't even know if he's been a top 20 quarterback this year. He's probably around that 20-ish area, which is a downgrade from Phillip Rivers last year, I think, or at least definitely not an upgrade. And I thought Wentz was going to be an upgrade this year for the Colts. He has not been, and he needs to be for sure for them to go anywhere. For them to win the division, I just honestly think he has to be as good as Rivers was last year. If he could cut down on the mistakes, if he could not throw left-handed interceptions for touchdowns, then I honestly think this Colts team is the better team in the division, especially with no Henry. So yeah.
Do you think it's possible for the Colts to make the playoffs without winning the division? Just looking at the other teams in the AFC, it's gonna be
yeah, I do. I think it's possible. The Bengals are not a sure guarantee to make the playoffs. Either or the Steelers, the Browns. They're all going to be there, but I don't think there's no is there like a lock to make the wild card right now?
I would say
I don't think there is. There's a lot of teams that have better records than the Colts, but there's no like locks.
Even though Kansas City's been super disappointing, they're maybe not a lock, but they got to be at least like 90%. They're just too good to not make the playoffs.
If you ask me right now, I would say 90% they win the division.
I think that's very possible. Again, the Raiders are 5-2, but
that's what I'm saying is I don't think the Raiders are a lock to make the wild card. I don't think the Chargers are a lock. I don't think the Broncos are a lock. I don't think the Patriots are a lock right now. I don't think the Bengals, Steelers, or Browns are locks. Are they in a better position than the Colts right now? 100%. 100%. But all it takes is 3 weeks from now, if the Colts win a couple games, the Browns, Steelers, Bengals don't do amazing. I don't love any of these teams enough to say the Colts have to win the division. I don't think they do. So,
I think Pittsburgh's going to fall back down. I don't like Pittsburgh at all. I think all their wins are ugly. And they're 4-3, but they could easily have such a different record in the negative way. So I don't like them at all. Cleveland's just been a disaster. We'll see what happens with the deadline. They said they're not trading Odell. I think that'd be perfect to trade him. So I think he's terrible, and he's terrible for that team. His dad posted the video of Baker missing him, like a 10-minute video. I think that's just bad. I think every team Odell's ever going to be on is always going to be some drama, and we knew that when the Browns got him, and it really never flared up that much because he was injured and just stuff. They were doing well, so it's kind of hard to have drama when you're doing well like that. But I think he's just a cancer to the locker room, and if they could trade him, I know they would. But we'll see what happens with them. The Bengals, again, a terrible loss to the Jets. Them being a 10-point favorite and just not even coming close to living up to those expectations. We'll see what happens to them. And then, the Raiders, Chargers. I think the Broncos are out. They're terrible. Especially they also just traded Von Miller to the Rams. But the Raiders, Chargers, Chiefs, I don't know. I could honestly see all three of those teams making the playoffs.
No, I'm not telling you I couldn't see it. I'm just saying they're not locks. As far as the Chargers are concerned, I've kind of had a revelation about them the past, since
their defense is killing them.
It's awful.
Their offense, Herbert's not playing well, but their defense is just terrible. So
I'll say this. The Patriots only won that game by 3 points. We probably should have won by 20 plus.
You guys should
have. That team, the Chargers are bad. Their defense is awful. For some reason, Josh McDaniels just decided to not want to run. Honestly, if they fired McDaniels today, I would not like.
Well, he didn't want to run the ball?
He just has some, I don't know, sometimes he just makes some head-scratching calls. In the first half, he just, didn't run the ball nearly as much as I thought he should have. Mac Jones missed, I want to say, literally 10 throws in a row in the first half. And they were open. He just missed them. And for some reason, against either the worst or a top 5 bottom run defense, we decided that we just don't want to run the ball that much. We started to pick it up in the second half, but honestly, I don't think we ran the ball enough. Had Mac Jones been making these throws in the first half, then I wouldn't be a problem. But he missed a lot of throws in the first half. And the offense of the Chargers, I'm not concerned about. I think they're going to be fine. But the defense is bad. The Ravens were a team that exploited it heavily. Obviously, they're the best running team in the world, but I don't trust this Chargers team. And they still kind of have that Chargers just feeling in them, which is somehow they're going to find a way to not win games that they should win or that they are being given. Because honestly, you could make a legit argument that the Chargers, I mean, they're probably the more talented team than the Patriots on paper. It's close.
Maybe skill position wise,
for sure. I think you would argue Chargers. I don't know. I don't love this Chargers team. The Raiders, I think they're gonna fall off at some point. Not having Gruden, I think Gruden's not a great coach, but I think not having your head coach it's still a blow. It's still just a blow. It's gonna be hard for them to make the playoffs. Carr, while he's a good quarterback, he's a top 14 quarterback probably. He's not. He's in that 10 to 14 range, probably 10 at his ceiling and like 16 at his lowest, probably around there somewhere. The whole thing with Henry Ruggs, I don't know what's going to happen with that.
Yeah,
that's
just
kind
happened.
of a blow. Yeah, I guess he technically killed somebody in a DUI. Yeah. I would assume he's done.
I would assume he's at least on the exempt list.
Yeah, there's no way he's going to play again, right?
I'd be surprised if he played again this season. Yeah.
Unless somehow he didn't kill somebody, I feel like it's tough for the team to want to. So yeah, I think the Raiders. I could see them making the playoffs. Like you're already 5-2, and so you kind of have a little bit of a gap there. But I don't trust this Raiders team. I mean, they're only a plus 14 in the point differential category, which is like not insane for a team that is 3 games above 500. I think that kind of shows that maybe you shouldn't be 5-2, maybe you should be 4-3, or maybe even worse. I think that the Chargers have a negative point differential. The Chiefs have a negative point differential. The Broncos actually have the biggest point differential in the AFC West, and I'm not saying the Broncos are definitely the worst team in the AFC West. I'm just saying. So yeah, I think the Colts. Essentially, what I'm saying is, I see the reasons to like a lot of the teams in the AFC right now, but I think the Colts are still in that conversation. I don't think any of the teams that are in wild card positions right now are complete teams that are like for sure locks. Like in the NFC, there's no Cardinals/Rams. So yeah.
Yeah. All right. So I think we should go over our predictions from last week. A really good week from you, and not a good week from me. Yeah, this was a week I somewhat felt confident, but obviously it didn't work out for me. So Packers-Cardinals, I had Cardinals, you had Packers. That one worked out for you. 49ers and the Bears, you picked Niners. That one was a win. Steelers-Browns, you picked Browns. That was your only loss, but Dolphins-Bills, we both had that one. We both took Bills. That was
honestly, we probably deserved to not win that one.
Yeah, that was. I mean, it was what 3-3 basically at halftime or something. I mean, that was a terrible game.
In the third.
Yeah. And the Bills somehow covered that. That was a really bad game. But we both got the win there. And then Cowboys-Vikings again. You had Dallas, and this was basically this time last week, and you said it before, but it changed so much, and then for them to still win, obviously, I would assume we would have just still stuck with this, right? Like even though the line technically changed later after we made the
we would have stuck. I would have stuck with Dallas being favored.
But it worked out anyway, so it doesn't didn't really matter. So you went 4-1. I went 1-4. My other pick was I had Patriots Chargers. I took Chargers. That obviously didn't work out. Bengals Jets. I took Bengals. Again, didn't work out. And then Giants Chiefs. The Chiefs again. They had 14 points halfway through the second quarter. I thought they'd put up at least 30. They just turnovers. Mahomes with another pick. Kelsey with a big fumble. He had a terrible game. Hill had a good, I guess, stat-wise game, but I think he had like 10 catches for like 90 yards or something like that. So he wasn't getting down the field. So again, surprising there. I'm done with the Chiefs, like I said before. So I guess we're both done picking the Chiefs, unless maybe something changes later, but I kind of doubt that. So now the record is you're 21-17-2, and I'm 25-14-1. So you made a comeback.
Yeah. I just need one more of those types of weeks, and then I'm at least tied. I'm still a few games back though, so I'm still 4 games back on you right now, or 4 wins at least back on you.
Yeah.
So I'm still behind, but yeah, one more of those weeks, and I'm back in it. I mean, I'm technically back in it anyways. Like it's only 4 games, so So yeah, I needed that week. I needed it. Yeah. I guess technically I could have missed on the Bills, and we still would have had the same result, at least in terms of.
I would have went 0. Yeah, I would have went 0-5.
Yeah. So.
But yeah. So unless there was another game you wanted to talk about, I don't know. Some of the games were blowouts.
Would you have the Bengals in your play? Like, if I made you pick your playoffs right now, are you putting the Bengals in there? Because you bet on the Bengals -10 against the Jets, and they lost.
Yeah, that surprised me. Just like Mike White had an insane game, but I was thinking Bengals. Again, you're going in such a bad team with a backup quarterback basically playing, thinking you could do just something, anything, but obviously it didn't happen. I'm definitely curious about this Brown situation. Like, will they figure it out? Will they not figure it out? I think they're the biggest question mark possibly right now. I guess you could say like Kansas City or something, but I have confidence in Kansas City to make a wild card. But the Bengals, I don't know. Their schedule, they go Browns this week, Raiders, Steelers, Chargers, Niners. Those are tough games. I don't think any of those are guaranteed wins at all. They have 4 of those games are at home, so clearly that helps. Their one road game is the Raiders game, but I think those are really tough games. This stretch is obviously going to be the determining factor if they do make the playoffs. I think they probably have to go, 3-2, to like really have solidify themselves as most likely a playoff team. So you go 3-2, they're 8-5. I feel like you're making the playoffs if you're 8-5 with 4 games left. So I think it's all just depending on these last 5 games, or these next 5 games, I should say. So I guess to answer the question, I kind of just went around it, but I'm going to say yes, they do.
Okay. I would say no. I like the Bengals, don't get me wrong. I think they're a solid team, but I just think they're probably a year or two away. I think on paper, the Browns are a better team. And I think that'll eventually catch up to the Bengals a bit. I think they're going to fall off just a little bit. I think the Ravens are for sure a better team than them. I think the Colts, if Wentz plays as well as I know he can, are a better team. The Titans are 6-2 right now. We'll see what happens to the Titans. I still think they're going to be there because they're 6-2. So, yeah. I think I don't know. It's close because they're kind of on the same tier to me as like the Raiders, Chargers, Patriots, Browns. Like, I don't know. It's just.
Yeah, I could definitely see the Patriots making it.
I think I would have the Patriots as a wild card team right now.
Yeah, Patriots go Panthers, Browns, Falcons, Titans, Bills, Colts, then Bills again. Yeah, I think they definitely have a shot. They just have to play. Again, they could have a couple more wins. The Dolphins game, they could have won. The Bucs game, they could have won. The Cowboys game, they could have won. So just 2 of those 3, 1 of those 3, and then you're 5-3, 6-2. I think it's definitely possible. For them to be like.
They're pretty much, in terms of looking at all the records in the AFC, they're kind of right in the middle of that wild card race. And they just beat the Chargers, so they've proven that they're at least competitive with these AFC wild card teams. Yeah, I think I would pick the Patriots over. If there was a playoff game right now between the Patriots and all the other wild card teams, I would say the Patriots would win most of those games. I would pick them over the Chargers, obviously. I'd pick them over the Raiders, pick them over the Bengals, pick them over the Browns, pick them over the Steelers. I'd pick them over whichever team in the AFC South loses the division.
Just not the Chiefs.
I wouldn't pick them over the Chiefs. I wouldn't pick them over the Bills. At least not right now. I wouldn't pick them over the Ravens. But that's like those are the only 3 teams that I'm like, yeah, they're for sure better than like the rest of the AFC. Like,
yeah.
So, I think Patriots for sure can. If I had to pick my 3 wildcard teams right now, I'd probably go Patriots. That's where it becomes super tough. I'm gonna say. I don't know. I literally have no idea, honestly.
Yeah.
Like, it's really tough. I just don't think I can go Raiders. I don't think I can say Raiders. I don't know, honestly. It's, like, super tough. I guess I go Browns. Do I really want to say Browns? I don't know. I guess I go Patriots, Browns, and then honestly, I kind of want to say the Titans fall out of the playoff race without Henry. Then I guess I go Chargers. I don't know. I would have something like that, like Patriots, Browns, Chargers, maybe Chargers, Raiders, Browns, something. I'd have something like that. So
Yeah, and the next 2 to 3 weeks, we'll see. The next 2 to 3 weeks are going to change everything in the playoff race because teams are going to win 2 straight games, lose 2 straight games, and then it goes from about 8 teams to probably 4 or 5 teams. So we'll see what happens in these next couple weeks because these are, like I said, the biggest weeks. For those 500 teams, 3-5 teams like that. So we'll see. But that's probably NFL wise. Was there another like injury or? I don't think there was another.
Thoughts
injury.
on the Packers cutting Jalen Smith after 2 weeks?
I don't really have an opinion on it. I would just say, he's not that good. So, and if they're cutting him, they're a team that needs linebacker help, and they're cutting him. So it just shows that he's just not that good anymore. So I don't really feel a type of way about it though.
Thoughts on the Von Miller trade, really, or not really? Just
I think it makes somewhat of an impact, for the Rams. You have Miller, Donald, and Leonard Floyd on your line. That is pretty scary. We'll see what happens. Miller's been pretty good so far this year. After a couple down years, and I know he was injured one of those years, but he's been pretty good so far this year. And now if you get to work on a line with Donald and Floyd, but obviously Donald, who's going to attract 2 all the time, he's probably going to get one-on-ones most of the time. So we'll see. Again, is he the player he used to be? No, but I think he's still a really solid player. And I think he could definitely make an impact on their team. Because, again, their defense, they have a lot of good players, but they really haven't been that good defensively so far this year. They gave up 22 points in the fourth quarter to the Texans. That game was over, but still, to give up 22 points in one quarter to the Texans, who obviously, at that point, they're honestly playing with backups. So, it's a little concerning there, but it's only going to matter against the top teams, the Packers, Cardinals, Bucks, and Cowboys. So we'll see what happens.
Okay. MLB?
Yeah, Game 6 is tonight. You had Astros in 7, right?
Yeah, it was either 6 or 7. I'm pretty sure I said.
I had him in 6. And yeah, I'm surprised. I'm for sure surprised. Now I knew, I don't think we talked about it, but the Game 5, I think you knew the Astros were going to win that game. I think if you were to bet on that, it was almost a guaranteed lock. And they finally came out hitting. There's something they really haven't done so far in the series, but they go against the Braves' best pitcher tonight, Max Fried. He didn't have a great start in the first one. He had 5 innings, 7 hits, a couple runs, so not good. So maybe they can hit him again. But do you think the Blue Jays win Game 6? And if they don't win Game 6, who do you have in Game 7? I know you picked Astros in 7, but just the way the series is going.
I think I go Astros still. If the Astros win Game 6, I'd go with them in Game 7. I think, I do.
So you think the Braves blow a 3-1 lead? Again.
Honestly, I don't know. I think tonight's game could go either way, but I think this is the game that decides it. If the Braves win, obviously they win the World Series. If the Astros win, I think they go on to win Game 7.
Yeah, I'd probably agree with that. Now, what hurts the Braves, obviously, Charlie Morton broke his leg in, what was that, Game 1? Game 2? Whatever
I think
game
it was
that
Game
was.
1.
Yeah, so, he would be pitching in one of these games. I guess he would have pitched Game 5, but, you could have used him for like a Game 7 or even Game 6 here or whatever. But that's obviously a big blow to a team that had the better rotation going into the series, but you lose one of your big guys there, so you really only have Fried. So we'll see how it works out, but I'd probably agree with that. If the Astros win tonight, I think they're winning Game 7. Obviously, I don't want to see that because I'd rather the Braves win, but that's just the way it feels. Like momentum, you're at home. You win that Game 5 elimination game on the road, come back home, you win Game 6, and then Game 7 again at home still. It's just so much momentum going your way, and the other team feels all the pressure because they were up 3-1. So, yeah, I'd probably see that happening as well.
Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, but I think just one more quick MLB thing. The awards are coming out in the next couple of weeks. Obviously, we did our awards prediction before the season started, so we can actually finally see what it is. I know most of our predictions weren't correct, Just like remembering some of them off my head. But yeah, when that comes out, we'll do something with that. And then we can even look at, if we want to, we could look at when we made all of our wins or losses, like over unders. We could look at that as well. But and that's probably it for MLB. There's when the series is over, obviously MLB season's over, and then we'll see if there's a lockout or not. That's also a big question there as well. So we'll see what that happens too.
Yeah, NBA wise, I mean, there hasn't, it's just been the start of the regular season, but do you have any take
Well,
so
do you
far?
want to talk about the Celtics game or no?
It's up to you.
Well, it's just because, you were up 19 and then lost by 14, all in the fourth quarter. So, I mean, it's got to be somewhat concerning. And also the Marcus Smart comments.
I mean, I've never. So I don't know. This Celtics team's just right now, we just don't have the chemistry that we typically. I guess the last time we had legitimate chemistry was probably the year that Kyrie and Hayward were out. That was year Hayward broke his ankle and Kyrie was out for the playoffs. But ever since then, we've kind of been a team with more talent than chemistry. We've kind of been the opposite before that. I think Tatum, while he's a super talented guy, could be potentially, we don't know for sure yet, but he may be a guy that, well, he is potentially a top 10 player in the league 2 years down the line. He's not a guy that makes people around him better. Like, LaMelo right now is not as good of a player as Tatum, I don't think, but LaMelo clearly makes the players around him just much better than they are. And I think that's something Tatum needs to work on, or maybe he just can't work on it. Maybe it's something he doesn't have. Smart, I think Smart should not be on this team. He should have been traded to me a while ago. He hasn't really been the super great defender that he was earlier in his career. At least not last year. And he's just not, he doesn't help the locker room. He's always had kind of feuds with like Tatum and Brown. It was supposed to, have worked itself out, but it hasn't. He takes way too many threes. I would have traded Smart, but what this team right now, they're just not good.
Yeah, I mean, what do you do with this team? I think, you have Tatum and Brown. And again, I've always been down on Tatum. I've always said that to you. And yeah, I think he can definitely be like a top 10 player or top 12 player, whatever it is. But I don't think he's ever gonna be. I don't think he's ever gonna be a superstar where he could just lead a team to a finals. He could, as long as you have another all-star, a couple good role players near him, that he's gonna be the main force and lead you to a championship. I don't think he could ever be that, unless he changes his game to be more adaptive, passing more into the whole team games. I think he is a lot solo act. And he's good, but you can't win just like that. So I think that has to change. But what does this team do? Because they're 2-5 right now, and again, they'll probably end up somewhere around 500. Maybe a little bit above or whatever, maybe even less. I don't know. But this team is not a championship team. It's not going to be a championship team anytime soon, unless they can somehow trade for a superstar. But they don't have any pieces to do that. They've missed on their first round picks the last couple of years with Romeo Langford and Aaron Nesmith. I mean, those guys are depth players, if anything. So where does this team really go? Do you trade a Brown? Do you trade a Tatum? Is that even possible? Do you try and change up this whole team? What do you do? I guess, what are your thoughts on, not blowing this team up, but changing a majority of the team to try and look for the future?
Even though this team hasn't been great thus far, and it really hasn't been great the past couple years, I still think Tatum and Brown have really good value, at least on the trade market, and I wouldn't trade them for anything less than what they're worth. I just wouldn't right now. I don't think we're that desperate, just because these guys are still really young. They're like 23 and 25, so we still have some time. But if you gave me an offer that was what I thought Brown / Tatum was worth, then I would definitely look at it. The stuff around them, I mean, anything. None of these pieces around them are really worth anything. So, yeah, I would be willing to trade anything regarding that. But would I actively try to trade Tatum and then settle for something that he's not worth? No. And I wouldn't do that with Brown either.
who would be more likely to get moved if it were between Brown and Tatum?
Brown. I think Brown for sure. Brown just. I love Brown, and I think there's an argument between that Brown is more like plug and playable on a championship team, as like the number 3 or number 4 guy on a team. But yeah, I mean Tatum's just a better player. He's younger. He's just gonna have more value. I think the Celtics are definitely more hesitant to trade Tatum than they would be to trade Brown right now. I'm not sure what the market is for Brown, and I don't think a team would be willing to give me what I think is good for Brown right now. So I would not trade Brown. I just think you're in a tough position. I think you have to just find a way for it to work itself out. I that's where you're at. I think if you want to trade a Smart, or if you want to trade for some, I don't know, trade whatever you want to trade. Tatum and Brown as a duo has to work itself out. I don't think you're 2-5 solely because of the people around Tatum and Brown. I think Tatum and Brown are still contributing to being 2-5. But yeah, I think you're in a tough position. I think you just have to try to get it to work itself out. I just think it's too early to blow up this team. And by blow up, I mean trade Tatum or Brown. So.
Yeah, I would. I think they probably, after this year, maybe next year as well. But yeah, I just don't know where any future pieces are coming, unless they draft well. But that just hasn't been. I guess it was technically age, but
I just don't know how you can. There's no such thing as like drafting well when you're drafting 15th, 16th every year.
But you could always find a Booker, a Mitchell. You could always.
But that's not even draft. That's just like hitting. That's just hitting the lottery. I mean, to me, that's just like hitting the lottery.
But they've had. I mean, that's where their last picks have been. Though. I think Neesmith was 14th, Langford was 15th, or somewhere like one or two spots away from that. You gotta get on someone. At least not just a role player, someone who's barely playing. At least like a 6-man, someone.
No, you're right. Like they could 100% be drafting better. It's tough to I can't say like we need a third best player on this team. We haven't been drafting well, and that's the reason why. Not many teams get their third best player on their team with the 16th overall pick, and when we're pretty much not drafting the lottery anymore because obviously the Brooklyn picks are long gone at this point. It's just tough. But yeah, what the market for Tatum I just think is non-existent. I find it impossible that two teams would be able to come to an agreement on what Tatum is worth and everything. Brown, I think is slightly more likely, but still just not likely. I wouldn't trade Brown for Beal right now. Beal's 100% like a better player, but Beal's I think is a free agent after this year.
Yep.
There's just no need. I think a lot of the time you can say there's like not much of a need necessarily to trade Brown for this player, whether it's Beal or somebody else. So
yeah, and another trade, I guess maybe candidate, is Damian Lillard. And again, we talked about him before the season started, but he's been really bad so far to start the season. The Blazers are 3-4, terrible loss last night to the Sixers without obviously Simmons, but no Embiid and no Tobias Harris as well, and they lost, not even really that close to be honest. And he's been really bad. He's averaging 18.5 points per game. I think his 3-point percentage is in like the 20s. Maybe it's up to maybe like 30, but he's been really bad. And of course he gets no hate on from the NBA media, of course, but. Do you see? He keeps saying the last couple of weeks that he wants to stay in Portland, but are you buying that, or do you think that he's kind of ready to move out and he's just waiting for something to happen?
I don't know. I really don't know. I think he's loyal to Portland, and I don't think he wants to have the narrative around him that he's looking to get out. But that could be because he just doesn't want to leave. He's definitely talked about like how him staying on Portland might tarnish his legacy, if you want to call it that, for forever. I don't know. I don't know what a trade would look like around Lillard. I don't know who would trade for Lillard. I don't know if he wants to leave. I think if he got traded, he would 100% be fine with it, as long as it's to a contending team. And I think those are the only teams that would have a competitive package for Lillard. Maybe, I don't know. I don't know. It's tough to think about what a Lillard package would be because he's just a top 15 player in the league, and I just don't know what amount of picks can equal that because they're just so hard to come by.
Yeah, I think there's not really another star player, or at least maybe a star and then a couple other guys that can kind of fit in a trade package right now. And again, that could always change, but Yeah, I don't. He just seems out of it. And again, them being 3-4, he didn't even want Billups to be the head coach from the start when they were looking for a new head coach. So I think there's a lot of problems there, and we'll see what happens, whether it's this year, maybe in the offseason if he gets traded. But again, that's probably the next superstar that's going to leave, most likely, right? I mean, I guess Beal technically, but he's going to be a free agent. And I'd be surprised if he were to stay in Washington. I mean, maybe, but he's not the level that Lillard is, obviously.
Yeah, no, definitely not. Definitely not. I mean, if Simmons was playing right now and Simmons was out of his mind and then Lillard was also having a down year,
Yeah.
that's something that, I mean, it would have to be Simmons plus a lot of other things. But
Yeah.
I think that's the reason you keep a hold of Simmons. And obviously he's not playing, but eventually if he does ever play for a few games and he kind of just gets on a hot streak and plays out of his mind a bit and then a star wants out, I mean, you could see something like that happen. We'll have to see what happens later in the year. There will be rumors regarding Lillard. If you made me bet right now, if he's on the Trailblazers to end the trade deadline this year, I think he gets traded. I think Lillard gets traded. I don't know where. We'll have to see how the year kind of unfolds. It's going to depend on what teams are competitive come the trade deadline and which ones are kind of already out of it. So yeah.
Yeah, we'll see. I think he would get traded this year. I think, like you said, the package just has to be there. But if the package is there, I think he's for sure getting traded before the deadline this year. But we just have to see what that package is, obviously, like we were talking about. But I think that's probably it. For this
Are there any
episode.
teams that you would have had in the playoffs to before the year started that you're out on? I know that's hard because it's only 5 games, 6 games into the year.
Oh, NBA. I think the Celtics are. I mean, I think they can still make the playoffs, but I think it's definitely going to be an uphill battle the entire season. Again, they're already 2-5, but the Pacers are 2-6. That's maybe a little bit surprising. They just have getting Carlisle in there, and they do have talent. So you think they'd be better, but again, you have a Charlotte that's been good. Toronto surprising 5-3. I think they're going to drop off though. Washington 5-2 again. They're most likely going to drop off. I think they can. Atlanta's only 4-3 as well, and the Bucks are 3-4. But I think Boston and the Pacers are at least somewhat surprising so far. The Pacers are always a deadline question, so we'll see if maybe they finally get rid of Turner or Brogdon or someone at the deadline. But yeah, for the East, that's probably it. And then the West, I mean, the Clippers are 2-4. They had a huge win last night. They could have been 1-5 easily. I think they're in an uphill battle because there's no Kawhi. If they have Kawhi, they're one of the best teams. But no Kawhi, I think it really does make a difference with them. But everyone else in the West seems pretty stable so far. I mean, I guess the Suns are 2-3, but I think they'll probably pick it up and at least make the playoffs. But I think everyone else is probably where we thought they'd be. And again, only being 5, 6, 7 games.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how the Zion situation unfolds. I know.
Yeah,
I don't know when he's coming back. Probably not for
another. He was doing 5-on-0 drills, but they said another 2 weeks till he actually starts playing people in practice. So,
yeah, I don't know.
So he said probably another at least month away, at least.
Yeah, if he comes back in a month, I mean, this team's probably already out of it. You would assume. I mean, they're out of it already, pretty much. So
they're terrible.
They're a bad team. So it's going to be interesting because if Zion wants out, I mean, how much leverage does he really have? And in terms of like the public opinion, I mean, what's the public opinion on Zion going to be? Because as talented as he is, he's not on the court all the time. There's obviously been a bunch of stuff about his like weight gain, which I think people maybe slightly over exaggerate. Maybe, I don't know. But there's been some stuff on that. So if he wants out of New Orleans, I mean, when it came to like AD or let's say Dame wanting out of Portland, I think 95% of fans are behind it. Most fans, at least, are behind it. But when it comes to like if somebody like Zion wants out of New Orleans, I think there'd be a lot of fans and a lot of public pushback on that because
he hasn't done anything.
Zion just hasn't given anything to the city of New Orleans for drafting him or anything like that, which I think some people would value. I think it'd be. I don't think I would necessarily criticize it because I think New Orleans just genuinely is a horrible franchise right now. And I think there's a legitimate shot that they move out of New Orleans in the next 5 years.
Yeah, that's a possibility, yeah.
But yeah, I don't think Zion hasn't earned his right to kind of like just say I want out like a Dame has, or I think an AD earned that right too. I think AD
He was there for
earned it right.
7 years.
Yeah, he was there for 7 years, and they really didn't do too much around him.
Yeah.
Dame for sure earned that right. So. Yeah.
But I do think Zion. Now again, the package has to be there. But I think this offseason, I think there's a pretty good chance he gets traded. Again, the package has to be there, and we'll see what the package looks like. I mean, again, he's super talented, and he easily is one of the better players in the league, but he's just never healthy. So, if he can prove that he could be healthy, or maybe the stuff that he's doing now is to try and get out of New Orleans. Like, I think he waited for surgery on his I think it was his foot this offseason. He waited on it. Also, the Pelicans don't let him come back when he wants. So it's there's so many different disagreements between the two. So maybe he's just doing stuff to try and get out and make it hard on them, the front office. But I really do think he probably gets traded this offseason. I mean, what? I don't know. I just don't think that he doesn't want to be there clearly. So I think he wants to get traded.
I could see it happening. I wonder what the package would be. I wonder where he would go. Zion's, to me, is a guy that you don't have to be a contender to trade for Zion. You can 100% be a rebuilding team and trade for Zion. Would I trade for Zion? Depends on the package, I guess. It 100% depends on the package. But, I mean, would I trade Jaylen Brown for Zion Williams right now? I mean, yeah, I guess.
I probably would.
I would. Would I trade Tatum for Zion right now? No.
Well, no.
But would I trade Brown? Yeah.
Yeah, I think a Brown, someone like a Brown, and then obviously picks or a couple of their players or whatever. I think that probably could do a trade, just because it has to be less because of the injury concern, obviously. So
yeah, a Brown and then pick 2 of our recent draft picks: Neesmith, Langford, Pritchard, something like that. Maybe a couple future picks.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Maybe that could be not enough to get it done, because I mean, you're trading a guy who could be a 1 potentially for a guy who his at best ceiling is probably a 2, but that's his ceiling is probably a 3. I mean,
Brown.
Yeah.
He's a 2 on a team like the Celtics, but he's probably a 3 on a championship team.
Yeah, but I think that's pretty much everything for this episode.
Yeah.
So. Appreciate everybody who stayed to the end of this episode. Feel free to check everything in that description, clips channel, all that. There will be a Cowboys and a Patriots episode coming out within the next few days. Also, on this channel, an episode coming out probably Thursday or Friday. So stay tuned for that. We'll be talking about next week's NFL games, probably World Series wrap-up as well. Maybe some more NBA talk, depending on what happens. So, yeah, feel free to comment, all that stuff. We'll be back Thursday/Friday.